I'm alive. I shouldn't be.
He should not be alive. This is unfucking believable.
From the heart of trucker America, my boy Reed Coverdale, host of The Naturalist, Capitalist.
This is what government does. It sucks.
If you think you're going to win people over by stating commonplaces, you're just selling the other part.
It is about dictating every transaction that you have for the rest of your life.
Mr. Potato Head.
Coverdale is the guy to be president of the United States.
You intimidated me with your perfect 74 stat.
That was the beginning of my problems.
He died doing what he loved, chasing a minor.
But I'll put a 50 cal attached to my Suburban.
Libertarians need to get out of New York.
The gulag is going to be in your house.
This guy's a fucking murderer. He deserves to be in a
dungeon. Gotta get him out of that truck at night and get him into the White House.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Naturalist Capitalist. If you're watching this live on YouTube, check the description and I'll have links to Odyssey, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere where you can catch the audio and visual versions of the podcast a couple days after it airs. And then I'm also on Twitter, Gab, Getter, Float, and also on Instagram and Facebook. Facebook, I don't really do much, but follow me on all of those. And I'll have a website coming soon. But for now, for those of you who do like Patreon, I have a Patreon where you can support me. That's also linked in the description. So we're having a crazy weekend here. Russia did go into Ukraine, and there's all sorts of misinformation. I've been hanging out with Scott Horton all weekend. I was just with him when he did a speech yesterday, basically explaining that everything that Russia is doing, whether or not we agree with it, which anyone who's anti-war doesn't agree with what they're doing, but it's pretty justified in a common sense, real life approach. But anyway, today I've got Ryan Dawson, or the ghost of Ryan Dawson, on to talk about misinformation and what's really going on over there. How you doing today, Ryan?
I'm a little jealous you're hanging out with Scott Horton, and but you know, that's okay. He can be jealous of us next week.
That's right. Yeah, Ryan and I are both going to be in Washington, D.C., and Putin this morning just said that Russia's basically on high alert. They're basically with their I don't know how to say it, with their protection system for nukes, they're on high alert. What did he say this morning, Ryan?
Oh, I mean, it was last night for me, but because for those who don't know, I'm in Japan, so 13 hours ahead. I'm in the future. That's why I get the news first.
Yeah.
Yeah, that option's on the table. They're like basically telling everybody, don't interfere or kaboom. These idiots are doing everything they can to escalate things, though. I mean, sending all these sanctions and banning of the media and banning of airlines, and now I think FIFA kicked them out of soccer, saying, "Oh, you can only play in intimate stadiums or whatever," which is just stupid. Like, the soccer fans, the soccer players have nothing to do with this, but it's collective punishment because they need to rage out about something, right? And all these billions of dollars of weapons they sent to Ukraine, just like with the Taliban, they're going to end up in the hand of the Russians. There's whole empty warehouses of them that they've captured already. So I've been just sitting back kind of laughing at the irony of the media coverage of this whole thing. I mean, when you look at the coverage of the other wars, the ones our country started in Iraq and Libya, and then also Syria and Afghanistan, or the coup in Ukraine in 2014, it was like full cheerleading, right? About Saddam's going to reconstitute his nuclear weapons program, yellow cake uranium, anthrax was given to Al-Qaeda by Iraqis. The Israelis came up with that one. WMDs, blah, blah, blah. And they never even issued a retraction after the fact. Like, yeah, that was all wrong. Gaddafi didn't have rape armies. Assad didn't gas his own people. They're just lockstep for it. So you can see how clearly the media is state-run media. It's not just big pharma and corporations, whatever. It's the government. Like, they say what they're told to say, or they lose access. And the big one in that list is, of course, the coup in 2014. They act like history started yesterday.
Right. Yeah. So where are you getting your information? How are you finding out what's going on? Because even with Scott, Like we were hearing all sorts of different shit, and we're trying to figure out what's true, what's Russian propaganda, what's American propaganda, what's actually happening. But how are you finding out?
Well, the
what's
great
going on?
thing about knowing stuff is you don't have to decide what to believe because you actually understand. And I've been following this from the coup onward, at least. I mean, tacitly since 2008, really. But yeah, I've covered this. I've had on Joe Lauria, I've had on Scott Ricard, I've had on Pepe Escobar and McGovern and all these people that are either experts on Russia or Ukraine. Joaquin Flores, James Corbett, like, and I've been talking about this and the Nord Stream 2 line and what was going to happen the whole time. You can, and anybody, if you ever want to know, where should I get some information? Ron Paul Institute, man. You could pull up a Ron Paul video from 7 years ago of him saying what we're doing in Ukraine is likely to start a war.
Right.
You know, if you understand what this is about, this is not about the expansion of NATO. Whatever, Germany was going to veto that anyway. Like that wasn't going to happen. That is something. It's good PR for Russia to say they don't want NATO on their doorstep, but it kind of already is in the Baltic states. They don't want them in Ukraine is true, but no government ever comes out with its real motives. Like just like the Iraq War, they're not going to say, "Yeah, we're not really scared of WMDs. We know they don't have." And they're not going to talk about energy. They're not going to talk about Israeli interests. You can't do that. And this isn't about annexing Crimea either, because first of all, it wasn't annexed. It seceded peacefully. Not a shot was fired.
Right.
And it seceded back to a country it used to belong to in the first place by a population that already speaks the Russian language. But that's, the U.S. would be like, they took Crimea in 2014. Crimea left in 2014. And why did they do that? Did you do something? Did something happen that caused the people to want to leave? No, they don't want to talk about that part either.
Right.
They're banning the Russian language and just the abuse of the coup d'etat where they set up oligarchs in Ukraine to ruin the country. 15 billion euros in debt, strict austerity measures. And they're looking east and thinking, man, should it be nice to live in that place again? And, they got to step in, but they act like it's an annexation. I go, oh, really? We care about annexations all of a sudden? That was the best when Israel was condemning annexation from the Golan Heights and West Bank, right? Or the Kurds, in that we are currently sitting on Rojava, Syria right now, protecting Kurdish annexation of Syria. And for a long time, we were protecting the same annexation in northern Iraq until Soleimani pushed the Peshmerga out. And then, of course, somebody assassinated him.
Yep.
And that could have kicked off a world war. And they didn't care about the assassination of Soleimani. When Trump did that, like, okay, here's all you Trump haters. Here's something his supporters will even agree with. Like, that was fucked. No, they didn't care. The left didn't care at all that he killed Soleimani. They're like, oh, you killed an Iranian. Well, and boy, that Iran deal sure looks sweet now. You're gonna need that oil and gas now.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So in Ukraine, it's funny that the left is always calling everyone that disagrees with them Nazis and that they hate democracy. But in 2014, they used a bunch of neo-Nazis to overthrow a democracy. So what percentage?
Similar. It's similar to the U.S. calling everybody terrorists except for the actual terrorists who they support.
Right. So what percentage of Ukraine's armed forces and government is infiltrated by the Azov battalion at this point? Like what amount of power do they have there?
Well, it's not infiltrated. Like that is a official battalion. That's their crack troops. Mm-hmm. And in 2014, these are the guys that are taking territories and having success on the ground. Russia has its own sort of Azov battalion counterpart, albeit like definitely not Nazis, but same sort of, ultra nationalist folk type stuff. And that's your Chechen crack force. And they're in there too. So yeah, let them beat each other up, whatever. But the fact that there is a professed Stefan Bandera Azov battalion, neo-Nazi, Nazi flags, all that in Ukraine, that is not just some fringe group nothing burger like the Proud Boys. Right. These are well-armed, official, like military, paramilitary that get hundreds of millions of dollars from the US and Canada and gear. Just like Al-Qaeda in Syria, right? Or billions of dollars in the case of the Taliban, right? We love arming miscreants because war or conflicts are good for business if you're in the MIC. The U.S. really doesn't lose much here, given the media is just making excuses for everything. They sell a lot of guns. They cripple two economic competitors. And, it just pushes Russia into the arms of China. It's good for the China and the U.S. to cripple the EU and the Russian state. But that's what they think they're doing anyway. But that's going to boomerang back so bad. I think this is the end of the Democratic Party because Biden's going to take an L on this. I don't care if the whole media is saying babies on incubators or whatever in Kiev. That's the style of propaganda. And man, they're like saying, yeah, we're shooting air bases in Russia. We've got the Ghost of Kiev shot down 6 million airplanes or whatever. It's all bull. And I want to stress that lying on TikTok and Twitter about how the war is going doesn't change how the war is going. Maybe it gets some morale for your yeehaws to put a Ukrainian flag on your Facebook avatar or whatever, but have some fucking consistency in your principles. Like, oh, you suddenly care about Kiev, despite the fact that they were shelling Donbass for 5 days before this conflict allegedly starts, right? Where they like it to start. I didn't see any flags of Yemen, and they've been starving and being pummeled by Saudi Arabia for years.
Yep.
I don't see that. I stand with Yemen. Let's protect the Houthi from Saudi Arabia. None of that. And endless examples of hypocrisy bingo can be cited. They care about Ukraine because the press told them they care about Ukraine. It's total NPC. Like they're just, I'm supposed to care about this one. Just like, I'm supposed to wear 3 masks. Dr. Fauci told me to. Or, whatever, Black Lives Matter, blah, blah. Whatever they say is the good guys is the good guys. Doesn't matter if they're burning cities. Doesn't matter if they're neo-Nazis. Because there's, again, Black Lives Matter, despite how it started against police abuse, ended up becoming just a blacktivist racist group going around setting stuff on fire and looting and assaulting people and even murdering people sometimes. And they've done millions of dollars in damage, like burning Kenosha and stuff. Antifa with them. Biden just calls that an idea, man. But then simultaneously to that, they're sending aid to neo-Nazis. Well, let's just call them Nazis, really, in Ukraine. Yeah. And, hit pieces on me by like Adam Holland, be like, Russia's our RT's Ryan Dawson, hate criminal, Holocaust denier, peed on Jesus, whatever. And this guy's he's accusing me of racism while he's supporting Nazis.
Yeah.
And the same, it's like, oh, we're the war on terror. I'm like, you are not. You are aiding Aral al-Sham, HTS, Al-Nusra Front, MEK in Baluchistan, like fucking Al-Shabaab, like all these Sunni Wahhabi Al-Qaeda groups get money and guns from the CIA. And yeah, I'm sick of them pretending like these aren't real. But if it's not on if CNN doesn't sit there and tell the couch potato, we're aiding Al-Qaeda in Syria, we're aiding Nazis in Ukraine, they're like, duh. They don't know.
Yeah.
Putin bad. He's a straight white male Christian. That's already like several check boxes of evil for the identity politics crowd, right? What'd you expect them to do? They brought out heavy artillery and started shooting it in Donbass, the 2 breakaway regions, for 5 days in a row. And that violates the Minsk agreement. There'd always been sniper fire and stuff. They've murdered over 13,000 people in the last 8 years. Yep. This war started in 2014, not February 23rd. Right. And they were recognized by 2 states, Syria and Russia. And they declared their independence, voted in an overwhelmingly referendum. They wanted to join Russia. Russia said no. They get neutrality. And Ukraine started firing artillery, hitting kindergartens and everything else. And just imagine that happening in America. Just imagine the Florida Keys getting bombed by Cuba or something like that. There's no fucking way.
We don't have to imagine it, Ryan, if you decide to secede, what they do to you here in the United States. So.
Yeah.
So as far as like the stories that are being reported, we're hearing about Snake Island, the Ghost of Kiev. We're seeing pictures from last year of Zelensky that are supposed to look like they were taken a couple days ago of him on the front lines, but he's really inspecting the border in 2021. You'll love this. You probably already know this, but there was one clip going around of a building getting bombed, saying that it was the Russians doing it in Kiev, but it was actually in Gaza from the Israelis. But are any of those?
There
stories...
was one also where they hit their own building with anti-air fire, clipped it. I'm like, why would they do an artillery bombardment and hit the side of one building, not like 50 buildings? Like, no, you misfired and hit your own apartment complex. That's all that happened.
So is there any truth to any of those stories, or are they all bullshit? Like
all of those
Snake
were
Island?
Bullshit. Snake Island. No, that it was not only is that bullshit, the exact opposite happened. 85 Ukrainians, maritime sailors surrendered, and they're on a bus. They're not even handcuffed. They're just like, I mean, they captured them. They took their weapons away, but they're not even cuffed up or tied up. They're just tired of it. And I don't think Ukraine could be doing a lot more damage to Russia than they're doing, and Russia could be doing a lot more damage too. They're not even like, they're like 90% held back right now. But Ukraine doesn't have the will to fight because these people, one, a lot of them don't really see Russia as the enemy, and they just don't want to fight for the corrupt, totally installed regime from the West that has done nothing but loot their wealth and act like a bunch of kleptocrats. It's hard to fight for someone like that. I mean, I feel like if the U.S. rolled into Canada, not a lot of Canadians are going to die for Trudeau. They'd be like, if, let's say it was President DeSantis or something instead, they'd be like, oh, yes, please, take us. You know, like, with Biden, he's just as bad as Trudeau, so my analogy doesn't work quite as well. But
yeah, you're right. The narrative is that, like, there are some cowards who would want to flee Ukraine when there's this completely corrupt government that's conscripting everyone to fight against Russia, which is obviously going to completely annihilate you.
Oh, they were passing around Molotov cocktails, like for PR, I guess. They're like, yeah, go throw this at a tank, like it's the Warsaw Ghetto or something. Because optics-wise, it makes you feel sympathy for Ukraine, like, oh, they're so brave. The citizens are staying there, and they've got Molotov cocktails. Not a single one has been used, by the way. But it's just a stunt. They're not in there sweeping street to street, and boy, they could be. I mean, they could just flatten the whole city from miles away if they wanted to. They're not doing that, and you're not going to have Molotov cocktail battles. But
so the reason they're not doing that is because they want to maintain as much Ukrainian sympathy as they can, right? The Russians, right? That's why they're not just murdering everyone and mowing the whole city down there.
Well, they also feel like in their mind, Ukraine is part of Russia,
right?
And so they feel like this place has been usurped by a Western-backed puppet regime, which it has, and they like to preserve it, and they don't want to fight. And see, if they were to flatten a city, welcome to 50-year insurgency war. You know, like, okay, now you've pissed off the public, and now they will go against you. Kind of like what happened in the American Civil War. If the North had not run around burning cities and stuff, that wouldn't have lasted 5 years. But a lot of people that didn't really want to secede or didn't care or like picked up a gun and joined the Army of Virginia because these dicks came down there burning farms and raping, and so they're like, well, I got to defend my homeland. The U.S. didn't learn this either. They went into Iraq and just flattened things, and then they got stuck in a quagmire for years. We had more soldiers die in the occupation than the war. It is not just like morally sound, it's tactically sound not to flatten the public, because they don't really make a dime's worth of difference militarily. They can't do anything. So killing civilians doesn't help you. It's fucking immoral, but it will turn them into soldiers if you just start going house to house, burning things, Sherman style. Then you're going to have everybody against you. So, and they already got almost half the planet, more than that, against them. But, you know, China is staying neutral, Azerbaijan, Belarus, India, Russia's not by itself. And they wouldn't even kick them off of SWIFT completely. It's like, oh yeah, American sanctions. Well, whoopee-doo. You didn't have any trade anyway. and only about 14% of the war chest was in dollars. And British pound is like 5% or something like that, whatever. They still need to buy their gas and oil. But I'll tell you how Russia's going to hit them back. Well, it already happened this morning, and China did it with them. They banned export of nitrate fertilizer and grain. Russia exported 30% of the world's grain, lopsidedly so to certain areas. Places like Brazil that imports almost entirety of its fertilizer from Russia and the rest from China is now getting neither. So you're not only going to freeze this winter, you're not going to have any food. And these rich plutocrats don't live in the real world. They don't care what the price is. Oh, it's $6 a gallon in California. So what? Because if you're a millionaire, it doesn't matter if it costs you $50 or $70 to fill up your tank. They have no clue. They're so detached from reality, from the common person, right? They hate working people. They call truckers white supremacists, right? These are the governments that are telling you to go die in Ukraine. The one that would, the ones that shut down your cities, that allowed gangs to loot and burn them, tells you have to have a COVID mandate or you'll lose your job. This is the side. Like, people they're not really for Putin. They're just against Biden, Trudeau, and Bojo, Boris Johnson. These people have been nothing but terrible to their own populations. And I wouldn't mind if somebody liberated DC. If they were good, I was like, yeah, get rid of them. Great. Awesome. Well,
speaking of that, we'll be in DC in a couple days. And I was thinking, we've got the trucker convoy that's going to be converging on DC when we're there. So you have a bunch of I don't know how many actually, but a bunch of truckers.
State of Union address too.
Yeah, you got a bunch of truckers on strike. You got crazy inflation. You got these sanctions that are going to cause even more trade problems. You got tons of people out of work. So the type of economic upheaval we could be going through in the next couple months could be, it'll be longer than that, but just coming up here, it could be really, really bad because you got so many things going on at once. And then our trade with Canada is also fucked up by this whole thing. I mean, it's just a big disaster waiting to blow up.
Could have avoided the whole thing by not having mandates and telling Ukraine not to shell Donbass. Could have avoided the whole thing. Stop firing artillery at your neighbors because they might invade you. And you don't need a mandate if you're sitting in a truck alone with a virus that you already have a 99.98% of surviving anyway.
Right. Well, I was arguing with some people because they were saying like, oh, it's so unfair that Putin doesn't want Ukraine to get American weapons. And it's like, well, hold on. That's like if Mexico was getting Chinese weapons and they were firing them into San Diego and El Paso. And we were like, yo, this has to stop or we're going to fuck with you. And then they're like, well, you're not respecting our autonomy if you won't let us get weapons from China anymore. Like it's
and troops
narrative. Yeah.
They sent trainers there too. And they had, like they say, China also sent troops to Canada and weapons, because they're arming, they've been arming all the satellite states. So, yeah, I mean, they're in Lithuania and Latvia and Estonia. And so, yeah, what would we do? That whole American exceptionalism, right? Turkish ships too, like they don't ever put themselves in someone else's shoes. They just expect them to bend over and take it forever. But Donbass was hit with artillery for 5 days before Putin. And I swear he was just thinking, well, the 23rd is the anniversary. That'd be a good day. They'd already had them surrounded and were leaving. And on their, like, as their tanks are going the opposite direction, right? Zelensky decides to start shooting in Donbass. Like, what reaction did you expect from that? They'll just let us blow them up. We'll just keep shelling them, harassing them. They also cut the electricity off. Like, who does that to their own country? They cut them off the power grid in 2017. So this area's already been getting electricity from Russia because they couldn't get it from Ukraine, even though they're allegedly part of Ukraine. This is a public, and the people who live there don't want to be part of it. It's gotten to that bad. I can tell you, like, let's say 2022 elections go around and the Democrats are still in power. They just mail themselves votes in, even though they're like polling at 30% and they win again. You'd see secession. Because people were like, there's no other option other than to leave. Because they're just going to cheat and lie, and we know it. And the media back them up. We have to separate.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to ask is, what do you think Putin's overall goal is going to be here? Because some people think he's just trying to prove a message. Some other people think he's going to invade the whole place and keep the whole place. And then he's talked about denazifying and demilitarizing it and not occupying it. But what do you think what is he actually doing in your opinion?
Well, usually he does what he says. So what he said, he's going to demilitarize it and denazify it. So that Azov battalion is fucked. If I was him, I would. He's already demilitarizing it in taking out all their airfields and anti-air defense, and all their any kind of stagnant target military hardware base has been like 200 and some of them are destroyed. Right, so they won't have a base of operations. The problem will be the men in the field, because he doesn't want to turn this into a meat grinder. But he'll blow up all their toys. He'll seal off the border to Poland and Romania, so he can take his time. And then he's going to send in his more forces, and they are going to encircle them, envelop them, and take their time wiping out every neo-Nazi or Nazi that decided to, wave these flags and attack them in 2014 is going to be destroyed. And, Ukraine still has a way out of this. They offered them again yesterday. You want to talk to us now? Come to Belarus. Okay, come to the border of Belarus. They didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So, he's going to do what he said. Now, he's being a little gentle. He's not killing civilians or anything, but he's going to demilitarize them. And once they are out of that and it's down to small arms fire, then the Chechens and others will come in and wipe them out. They're not going to have this puppet regime. It's already over. And, they're saying the EU is sending fighter jets right now from Poland to Ukraine. Well, what are they, how are they going to get in? I mean, fighter jets, are you serious? S-400 will tag them before they get off the runway. That's what the Ukrainian Air Force was already wiped out in the first 2 hours. Sending in more planes is just let's just throw paper to the fire. Maybe ice cream will come out. It's such wishful thinking, but they don't care. They're like, actually, I think they know. They're just like, well, how much does a jet cost? All right, chalk that up on the fucking deficit, right? They're just making money. And that's just Leslie. That's your crony capitalist right there. It's like, we know it's not effective, but just let's get rid of all our obsolete weaponry. Let's send them the shittiest anti-tank guns, stuff that's unusable, and act like we're doing something. We sent them anti-tank weapons with fancy letters and numbers behind it, but you really look it up, see what it is, shoulder-propelled grenade that would even penetrate the armor. It's just ridiculous stuff. So I don't think he's going to do a negotiated settlement. I think they offered that knowing it would be rejected, to say, hey, because this is PR. We gave him peace terms a couple times and they wouldn't talk to us. So they can't turn around and accuse him of that. But he knew they're not going to talk. Zelensky's afraid to meet. He's probably in his bunker, pissing himself right now. I don't think they're going to put a bullet in his head. They're going to put him on trial. There's nothing anyone can do about this. You can sanction Russian. They've made countermeasures all the way down the line. You really want to start World War III? I don't. Ukraine fucked up. They bombed Donbass, and now they're getting their comeuppance. It's what any nation would do.
Mm-hmm.
If someone bombed if somebody bombed Puerto Rico, they'd get hit by the U.S. They would. It's just how it is. Unless it was Antifa, Black Lives Matter, they can do whatever they want.
So our current president has a lot of interests in Ukraine, and ironically, our last president he did get impeached, just not convicted, but he got impeached for basically looking into what Joe Biden did in Ukraine. But can you just explain to those who still don't know about the Burisma gas company what Joe Biden actually did?
Well, Trump got impeached for the phone call with Ukraine, and then they were like, okay, that didn't pan out. Well, Michael Flynn made a call to Russia. So that was over trying to get them to change their UN Security Council vote in favor of Israel, right? And they decided, no, we're not going to be in favor of Israel. They've also, Russian foreign minister has called the Golan Heights part of Syria.
I saw that.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, oh, popcorn time, right?
That's why he's got the Putin profile there behind you.
Yeah, they're accusing him of quid pro quo with Ukraine. But that's what Joe Biden actually did. And I've got a video on BitChute, 78,000 views now. It's not bad for BitChute.
It's linked in the description, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, and the first
Cornpop's Revenge.
Oh no, that's my own film. I've got another one from the Anti-Corruption Agency on Ukraine with all of Biden's calls and stuff on it. It's 5 hours long. Like, the guy's so fucking guilty. See, everybody's seen, I think, the infamous call or this recording at the CFR meeting where he's like, well, son of a bitch. Yeah, he's talking to Poroshenko and he gets the prosecutor looking into Burisma to fucking take a hike, which he has to do because Hunter Biden's got an $80,000 no-show job. $80,000 a month, by the way. He doesn't speak Ukrainian, doesn't know shit about energy, but he's working for the Ukrainian energy industry, and he's like the vice president title, whatever. Yeah, and he's like, we got to get rid of this guy. He's looking at my own white collar crimes for my family. And you're right, I did make a film called Cornpop's Revenge, but it's also called the Biden Crime Syndicate that goes over their just horrendous relationships with Ukraine oligarchs and the communist Chinese and, Mexican cartels and everything else. They're deeply involved, Iraq war profiteering. And it's Joe Biden, it's Frank Biden, it's Hunter Biden, it's all the Bidens are involved in these things. And but the other video I'm talking about is from it's like, if on my BitChute's the second most popular video on like most popular video thing from the Anti-Corruption Agency, and it's just like one thing after another, and it's Biden, and then this guy becomes president, and suddenly, there's a war in Ukraine. Like, this is what these neocons and shitlibs have been planning since at least 2014 when they installed the government there. And make no mistake about it, Yatsenuk and then Poroshenko after him were handpicked oligarchs who are just at the behest of Monsanto and a long list of your usual suspects, right? And we've got the call from Victoria Nuland saying, fuck the EU. We're going to put Yatsen, because she can't pronounce his name. This would be our guy, right? She's married to Robert Kagan, notorious neocon of the Iraq War. And Victoria Nuland wasn't punished for any of this. She works in the Biden administration now. She failed upwards. And the neocons, like David Fromm, who's a Canadian neocon that wrote the Axis of Evil speech for Bush with Wormser, I believe. They're all anti-Russia, pro-Ukraine, and the same rhetoric, right? You cannot tell the difference between these classic Bush, the lesser era neocons, and your shit-lib leftists, because they're all in agreement on this. Whether it's Hillary Clinton to Richard Pearl, right? They're all the same when it comes to Ukraine and lessening Russian power, because Russia is a threat to American hegemony. That is the counterbalance. They're like, we can't get our war in Syria because the Russians got involved, so Israel doesn't get its way in Syria. And in a way, the reason Iraq and Iran were able to push out the Kurds in Iraq is because America's Al-Qaeda forces were so weakened by Russia, Iran, and Hezbollah in Syria. They're losing. Syria retook the whole southern half of the country and has been holding that since 2017. They've got Hama, Homs, Daraa, Deir ez-Zor, of course, Damascus, Palmyra, Manbij. It's all Syrian now. And there's just that, and Aleppo, obviously. That's the big one. Raqqa's a little bit, stuck in Rojavastan with the Kurds. And then, of course, that Afrin area with Idlib city in particular is full of ISIS and protected by the Turks. But by and large, I mean, you could roam around Damascus. You have more freedom in Damascus right now than you do in Sydney, Australia.
Yeah, that's
you can go outside, eat a sandwich. You don't need a mask. Putin kind of killed COVID, didn't he?
Oh man, so
I can't panic about two things at once.
So how big a role do you think the American support of Ukraine has played in Biden's I phrased that backwards. How much of a role has Biden's interest in Ukraine played a role in America's defense of Ukraine?
Oh yeah, 100%. It's all of it. It's not just Biden. Like, this is the entire country for money laundering. So Hillary, John Kerry, Joe Biden, all the usual suspects. John Kerry's kid also works in Ukraine, right alongside Hunter. Right, Chris Hines and Hunter Biden have business deals. They had another partner, Devin Archer, who's now in jail, who helped them set up Rosemont Centrica in China with the Communist Chinese, backed by Communist Chinese banks, taking their 10%. God, these idiots sold American technology to China. And here's another one. Joe Biden.
Oh yeah, I know where you're going with this.
Joe Biden went to China saying Russia's building up. We want you to intervene. And China just turned around and shared all the intelligence with the Russians. And then you had Mark Milley, Mr. Woke, Milli Vanilli, decides to call China and say, don't worry, we won't surprise attack. If there's first strike, I'll warn you. The fuck, dude? You're an American general. Why are you going to warn the Chinese if we're about to attack them? We were not going to attack them, but like, you're going to tell them, don't worry, I'll warn you if we're coming?
Right.
Are you a fucking spy? And, of course, we've got Miss Fang Fang and stuff. We've got Democrats sleeping with the enemy, literally sleeping with the enemy, getting spied on. But China knows every move we're about to make, and they share it with the Russians. And they've set up their own countermeasure to SWIFT. And so both China and Russia have been doing that. Russia started that in 2014 when the first round of sanctions came. They decided, okay, we're going to need to build up a bigger war chest and diversify it more. So they set up the Systems for Transfer of Financial Messages, the SPFS, as like the countermeasure to SWIFT. And it's got over 400 banks, Russian banks on there. And then the SWIFT sanctions they've already put in place don't even limit euros and gas trades. So it's womp womp already. But this is a good thing for the world for there to be SPFS, because monopolies are never good. And a lot of people are looking at it. They saw what happened to Iran. They're seeing what's happened to Russia. And they realize, wow, if we get out of line, America will just cancel us.
Right.
And boy, do I know how that feels. Like the beginning, you were like, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and I would get ready to say, yeah, I'm not on any of those things.
Yeah.
I got a Telegram. I do have an Odyssey. I have Telegram and Substack, though. Substack's like the most mainstream thing I'm allowed to use, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. It's not even that mainstream, but it is owned by LinkedIn. And I'd count that as mainstream, but yeah.
So do you
You've
think
got the Eurasian Economic Union too that's supporting Russia, and you've got China has its own, the CIPS, which is the cross-border interbank payment system. And Alibaba is like Alipay. Alibaba's like Wish, or one of those you can get cheap things from China basically. But Alipay, this is a multi-billion-dollar company, is working with VK, which I'm also on. I'm on all the Russian shit because I got banned on the American stuff years ago. VK, you can get payments if you're Russian. Russia, Kazakhstan, and South Korea, which is why South Korea, but they're on Quickie. And so they use that payment processor. And then you can get paid on VK, like people can donate to you and stuff through that. So that's a small workaround, but the bigger thing obviously is the SPFS. That's their counter to SWIFT, and it's got German banks, Swiss banks, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan banks, and a few others on there. I think, and then all those smaller states in the EAEU will be part of that too, like Armenia and Belarus.
So does Russia have plenty of its own oil infrastructure?
Okay.
They don't need anything external, or
it's almost like what Hitler wanted with the, he was a shrinking markets guy. Like,
yep.
Do they have oil and gas? Yes. Do they have agriculture? Yes. Do they have high tech sector? Yes. Like they're basically independent on all the pillars of what you need to be a functional country. The exception is you're already set at a certain level, assuming international trades. If you take that away, they can debase the ruble. But their war chest is in the hundreds of billions. And so what they did is they bought yuan, they got euros, dollars, British pounds, yen, gold, and so on, diversified. And yeah, they can withdraw they can say no more dollar transactions and but that's so stupid, because temporarily it'll do them some damage, but it's just going to help build up their SPFS system, and they're still going to be able to buy rubles to help float it by using the foreign currencies like euros,
right?
Which is about 25%. And of course the yuan. So it'll help the Chinese again. Like, thanks, Biden. You're helping the communist Chinese, and you're putting austerity measures on Europeans. You're going to raise the gas prices even further in America, and it's not going to change the war in Ukraine 1 inch. Like, it's nothing's going to happen. They're going to do what they're going to do. And now that you've sanctioned them, there's no turning around. They're definitely going to do it now.
Yeah, right.
Like, well, you already gave up your leverage, so why should they capitulate? Like, well, you're already punishing us. You might as well take some territory.
Yeah.
Like, the more you do this,
the more they're just going to double down.
Yeah, the more they're going to triple down. They're just like, well, you could have said do it or else. And then they might go, we got enough. I don't want to get banned, but they banned you. So like, well, okay, well, why should I leave? You already ruined that. They know it's winter time and they need heating. Italy and Germany in particular get like 40% of their oil and gas imports from Russia. And if you turn around to get liquid gas from the United States, import, I don't know, coal or something, or turn your nuclear power back on, which they won't.
No shit.
Yeah, I know. That's another. You don't get me going on that. But they green energy is such a crock. It's such a salesman thing. Like, well, it's got such a nice sounding environmental veneer, but it's just bull. Like, it doesn't work.
It's a political stunt. Having worked on power lines and seeing power production and being involved with windmill plants, it's a fucking political stunt. It's such a joke. So
I like Elon Musk built all those solar panels outside Tesla, and then he had to plug into the grid anyway, because they didn't even produce 1% of his energy needs. Like 99% he's plugged into the grid, which means oil, gas, and coal, right? But it looks good, and then they're falling apart, and it's not even worth paying to replace them, because they don't even produce so much for like the fucking cost of the panel, right? And they're like, oh, we'll subsidize it. I'm like, no, god damn it, Lincoln, no. Because when government subsidizes an industry, they just raise their prices because they know the government's going to pay X amount, so why not charge more? That's what happened to college tuition and the rest of it. Like, oh, you have a guaranteed loan? Well, then it's this much now,
Right.
No, don't subsidize green energy, reward innovation. Like, what reduced carbon emissions the most in the last 30 years? Switching from carburetors to fuel injection in automobiles. Free market, motherfucker. That's what did it. Oh, it's do less emissions and it's more efficient. And yeah, that's what works. But they want you to force you onto windmills or whatever, and this stuff doesn't work. Like, and the things that do work, like thorium, they're not interested in.
Right.
Because you can't build bombs.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't need to invade so many countries for that either. So that's
you could have energy independence electrically anyway with thorium.
Yep.
And then if a lot of U.S. is not in this boat because only 1% of its electrical needs are from oil, but most countries use a lot of oil for electricity. And the U.S. is still 51% on coal, right? Which is worse for the environment than toxic waste from a nuclear plant. But if you switch to thorium, that frees up all that oil. But I don't think they're like, no, but then what would keep the poor and the middle class down? Like it takes initial capital to rise. Like you when you're living hand to mouth, you can't really invest or do anything because you're just paying your rent, your food, you're paying your rent and your food. But if you get a chunk of savings just a couple times in a row, you actually do something like that and change your life. Like you can go up a rank, but you got to have, it takes money to make money. And they know they want to keep you strapped on that subsistence living lifestyle. But if you lower oil, you lower gas costs, it makes everything cheaper. It's not just going to work and back. It's all the goods you buy in the store have to be transported to that store from factories and stuff. It costs them less to bring it there. Prices go down on everything when the price of oil goes down. And the price of oil goes down dramatically if the price of electricity goes down, which you can do with nuclear power. But no, because big energy would lose a lot of money. It all then all these oil and gas companies and the green companies would be turned against you. So that's why they hated Jimmy Carter so much. He was pro nuke.
Yeah. So I mean, a lot of people, I think they've been utopian about the collapse of the empire, that nothing will replace it. But obviously, as the United States empire starts to crumble, the Russian and Chinese are going to be like, okay, we're going to move on. We're going to move in on this. We're going to take advantage of this. I mean, that seems pretty inevitable. It seems like that's really starting to happen.
Yeah, it can get so much worse. You think America's bad? It is. But trust me, China, okay. China's a country that's got an excess male population because they had this one baby rule, right? Where they just killed the girls. And there's like 300 million more boys than girls, like an entire United States more of men than women. So there's a deficit. So they have a lot of mail-in brides and stuff. And this has just led to just mad human trafficking where you order a wife and incident after incident, you got girls that are chained to the wall or chained to the floor naked, raped by the whole village for like years. They just abuse these women and they don't give a fuck about it. Right. It's so disgusting. The abuse of women in China. And in fact, that would not happen in America. Culturally impossible. Like, I don't care if you're a fucking shit lib, neocon, whatever. You're not going to chain women to the floor and have them gang raped. Ever. Or torturing dogs and like all the fucking crazy shit they do in China. Like, I've had people try to give their children to me. Like, please. They've got more homeless people than Texas has people. They've got almost 800 million people live on $5 a day or less. So, don't judge China by the richest people in Beijing. That's like judging medieval times by the king and his court, not the fucking serfs living on cabbages and dying at 38 years old, right? China's fucked. I don't want them increasing in power. They are culturally backwards. They engage in ethnic cleansing, Hun supremacy, all that crap. And, it's hypocrisy bingo to condemn the, killing of Uyghurs if you're not going to do the same for Palestinians and stuff. But I do condemn the killing of Palestinians. I am consistent on this. Like, I have been condemning whoever does it, and China does do it. And, America supports it in some places and not in others. Well, I'm okay with the not in others, and I just wish they condemn it in the other places too, I have been talking about Yemen. I made a movie about it. I have been talking about all this stuff. I'm not just focused on Ukraine or something, but right now they're getting some comeuppance. I mean, they abused the people of Donbass. They murdered children on a beach. They locked people up in a warehouse and set it on fire. I mean, that reminded me of the Mystic River Massacre. That's what the original state holiday of Thanksgiving in Massachusetts was about, where they locked 700 Native Americans in longhouses and burned them. And anybody that came out got met with the axe or the musket ball. 700 people burned alive. And then they had a Thanksgiving for their glorious Christian victory or whatever. That was the original state holiday of Thanksgiving, not the turkey stuff we celebrate today. Lincoln changed that. He just mythologized it. There was something like that in Virginia where they all came and ate together because they were starving to death in Jamestown, and the Indian brought them deer. And you know what they did? They poisoned the wine. And Bacon went in and started head chopping and killing Indians under a truce, invites them to dinner, poisons the wine, gets rid of the men. Those women got raped, and then they went and started burning their own settlements. They don't teach you that in your little Jamestown history. They act like, oh, no, Bacon's rebellion was, again, kidnap the governor and stuff because they weren't getting a fair price or something, and they're importing food from England. I'm like, they're importing food from England because they can't trade with the natives because of your own hostile relations with the natives. They were giving you food, and you fucking ambushed them, and now you're starving because they won't cooperate with you anymore. He went around burning other people's tobacco fields so that he could get a higher price, him and his gang, for his own. Right?
Mm-hmm.
He was not the raging proletariat hero or any of that crap. The fucking butcher. Anyway, nobody knows U.S. history, and they sure as fuck don't know the history of Ukraine. I'm like,
no,
you don't know the history of your own state, and you're sitting here mouthing off to me about towns and cities you learned the name of this week.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm over it, man. Like,
yeah,
they don't know what they're talking about. And they don't even know that they don't know. Like, I don't know. There's places I don't know much about, and I never talk about it. I'm like, I don't know the inner workings of the fucking political environment in Mongolia right now or something.
Right.
I don't pretend to, and I won't. I still probably know it better than most, though.
I was talking to one of my former coworkers, and he was like saying he was ready to. He's like, I might even go join up and go over there and try to fight. And I was just like, do you know anything about Ukraine? Like anything about the last 8 years? What does Azov Battalion mean to you? Do you have any idea what that means? Or do you even know what Sevastopol is, or what the Black Sea is, or why a port there would be important to Russia or Ukraine, or like they just don't know fucking anything about any of it. And they're ready.
But there's a Ukrainian flag on the Facebook app.
Yeah, I know.
I would encourage people, if you can share the link to the Substack. I made a video about the media, the military, the economy that kind of goes over it. Like, I felt like, what was it, 40 minutes long? It's not long. But there's so much bullshit on Twitter, Facebook, whatever, that, yeah, you need to get, I would say you can source from news and all, but I don't think people are ready for an hour-long talk from Ray McGovern or Paul Roberts or whatever. But if you just want like a little video explaining it to you, the most recent Substack post I did, it's got a video on the top. It's also on ANC Report if you want to watch it over there with Odyssey. That one's a little longer because I did some commentary at the beginning and end of it. But yeah, I mean, the reality of what's happening on the ground and why it's happening is completely missing. They've reversed it. They act like they're winning a war that they're totally losing, and they act like it started out of the blue for no reason, just because Putin's an insane maniac or something, and completely omit the last 8 years of history, and most importantly, the 5 days preceding the conflict where they were shelling Donbass.
Yep. Yeah, it's I don't know, like, I think, some of us, like I didn't actually think Russia was going to do anything this time, and neither did Scott and a couple other people. And it's not because they didn't think it was reasonable. It's really because Russia just hasn't fucking done anything like all this time. They've been incredibly reserved, where they've had a lot of excuses to do stuff, and there's been nothing but fucking warmongering coming from the media. It's all like Russia through the 2016 election. Russia's doing this. Russia's going to do that. Russia. So when you hear any fear mongering about Russia, the tendency is just be like, I don't believe you anymore.
Right. It's a reasonable take, and they weren't doing anything
right
until the shelling. Like all that stuff, all the 8 years of history, we could say, but Russia was like, still, it's a pretty big move to invade a country. They weren't going to do it. And then when the U.S. started ranting and raving, accusing them, oh, you're going to do it. You're going to do a false flag. You're about to invade. And use their own lies as a pretext to start sending more weapons and troops to Ukraine. And then Ukraine started shelling Donbass. Russia's like, we got to do this. And they've been waiting for winter anyway, because that's when they have the most leverage. That's when the ground is frozen, so you can bring your tanks in easier.
Yeah.
It's also when Europe needs heating the most, right? They don't want to cut off oil and gas, and they haven't. You may see further sanctions in April or something when it warms up on the oil and gas too. but right now it's cold. So they're like, nah, no, we're good. You know, they don't. I don't want to be cold. Like they want all these other people to have sacrificed their life and stuff. They're like, no, I don't want my heating bill to go up. But they needed it for tactical reasons too. Frozen turf. Russia is a tank and artillery kind of bear, so they've got them in there. And you know, tanks are just mobile artillery anyway. I mean, that's all it is. And so it favors them on a military tactical level to start it in the winter. And yeah, starting a war with Russia in the winter is never, what could go wrong, right? It's never been successful ever in the past. So for anybody. Yeah. So it's not going to be successful for Ukraine. And they did start it by shelling Donbass. That is an ally of Russia, Russian speaking people. And you're shooting them with heavy artillery and you're getting weapons and you're talking about joining NATO. And Russia's like, we're going to preempt that. I mean, it's like Zelensky could be like, I poked a bear and it bit me. Yeah, it did. That's what they do.
Yeah. Or it's like if you eat nothing but fast food and you're getting fat and you end up in the hospital, or like before.
Like, I don't understand it. I got a Diet Coke with my Happy Meal.
Yeah, it's like your friend's doing that. He's just eating tons and tons of fast food. And you're like, dude, you need to stop or you're going to end up getting really unhealthy. And then he ends up in the hospital. So you go in and you tell him like, hey, dude, what did I tell you? And he'll be like, what, are you taking the fast food side? It's like, right. Yeah, what did it take? You know, we've been telling you all along, and you just keep pushing and pushing.
Yeah, they never have accountability or responsibility. Like, I ate all this junk and got fat. And like, we told you not to eat it. It's like, it's their fault for putting corn syrup in the food. And I'm like, you know that's in there. Don't eat it. That's on you.
Yeah.
There are really skinny people who need the corn syrup, right? There are some people who can't gain weight, and maybe they like that kind of food. But you're not one of those people, so you shouldn't eat it.
Have you seen George W. Bush and Condoleezza Rice and all these people condemning the invasion of Ukraine by Russia? That's pretty rich.
George Bush Jr. I can't even honk. You know, it's like the clown role. Condi Rice too. She called it a war crime. It's not actually. It's a war. War crimes are how you conduct a war, not going to war. Right. You can say the war was stupid. You can say it was unjustifiable. You cannot say it was unprovoked, though. I mean, you could say it's a overreaction or too much or whatever. They could have said, look, Ukraine's violating the Minsk agreement during that 5-day period. And well, actually, they did say that. There was a series. Yeah, fuck. There really was nothing. They tried everything. Yeah, I was getting ready to say something, but then I caught myself. Wait, that was in his speech. Like, as the meeting's being held, there's more shells coming across. Yeah, they're putting an end to a war, an ongoing war of attrition that's been going on for 8 years. They're tired of it. And, Finland and Sweden are talking about joining NATO. Please don't. Don't do that. I like those countries. I like them to exist. Don't do it. And you see Macron's reaction. Instead of maybe we shouldn't be aiding Nazis and moving weapons into countries on Russia's border, to, well, we're going to spend 2% of our GDP on weapons to build up European militaries again. We're going to get off Russian oil and gas. Okay. Are you going? Well, you can't have from Iran or Russia or anybody Israel doesn't like. So what's your plan? You won't use nuclear power. You don't have the oil in the ground. So what's your plan? Just going to buy it from the United States? Gee, I wonder who came up with that plan.
It's funny here in the States. I don't know if you've heard this yet, but a bunch of governors have asked state liquor stores to stop selling Russian liquor. And it's like, it's already here. Like,
yeah,
who's that hurting?
Don't reorder it. You know what I mean? Just stop reordering it if you want. But
yeah,
that's fucked.
It's dumber than freedom fries. It's like, at least the freedom fries, you can still get the fries. This is like, throw all that stuff that we already bought from Russia out.
Isn't that funny? We're not gonna get rid of French fries. We'll just rename them.
Clown world. So, do you think this will have any effect on the United States monopoly through the world reserve currency? Like, if this lasts a long time and Russia is really trying to be independent and China's joining in with them, do you think that could actually crack it and fuck us over on trade big time in the long run and everything? Or
Yeah, I mean, they're not joining it. They have joined. Like that's already happened, and this is going to have major impacts. But like I said earlier, I don't own rubles, whatever. I'm not too worried about that. And I live in Japan, and I use mass transit, so I'm not so worried about gas and oil for myself. But I'm worried about it for others. But I'm more worried about the ban on nitrates and grain because that's the impoverished people are going to die. And it's going to hit Latin America hard. And like to me, that's something I'm worried more about that than middle class people paying more at the pump. You know, they'll live. I'm much more worried about the bans on fertilizer and food than I am oil and gas. But to answer the other half of your question, yes, they're the monopoly, the SWIFT monopoly, is dead, and that's probably a good thing in the long run. That there needed to be competition from that. You can't have autonomy if it's a do it or else all the time. Do it or we kick you off of SWIFT. Do it or we kick you off of SWIFT. And that's what happened with Iran. Iran's opposing Israeli interests in the Middle East. That's why they've been kicked off SWIFT and put sanctions. They're not building a nuclear bomb. They're not a threat to the United States. Israel wanted sanctions. Israel got them, right? If there's an alternative, you can bet your ass that Iran is going to join China and Russia's nexus and start using their system for international transactions. And good on them. You know, I want peace and trade. I want the standard of living to rise for all people everywhere. And trade is what prevents wars. When you've got so much interlocked business that it's like, no, we can't risk losing all this. It's when you stop trading and you stop talking to people, which is actual isolationism, that then wars are on the table because there's nothing to lose. You won't have dialogue. You won't have trade. So let's fight, right? Now, peace comes through trade. The more interlocked, like you could never see a war between South Korea and Japan again. They just do too many business deals. You know, it's too much to lose. They can hate each other culturally all day, but it's like, yeah, but I do like Toyota. Yeah, I do like Samsung, or so not happening.
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears here a little bit. I want to ask you about Jean-Luc Brunel, a name that everyone's completely forgotten because he died like over a week ago now, or about a week ago, and everything's gone nuts since then. But as usual, there's tons of misinformation surrounding how he died or whatever. So just tell us what happened to him.
Yeah. Well, I forgot to do my shekel chats. Oh well. Better late than never. Jean-Luc Brunel was the number 3 man in the Epstein ring with Epstein and Maxwell. He was a procurer. He ran MC Squared models. Before that, Karen models. They rechanged the name from Karen to MC Squared to Identity Models, which was in 2019. And he got captured in 2020 in Paris, or outside of Paris, Charles de Gaulle Airport. Handcuffed him, threw him in jail. He raped little girls, like 12 years old. He would bring them to Jeffrey Epstein and his cohorts down there, mostly in Florida. There's pictures of him playing around with Ghislaine Maxwell. He used to drug women, roofie and liquor them up and rape them. There's a 60-minute piece of what he was doing, but he used his modeling agencies as a way of recruiting very attractive young women and girls meaning, under 18. So fuck that guy. But he had a lot of information on clients, on the clientele of Jeffrey Epstein. He even sued Epstein, but didn't serve him papers. It was a way of trying to distance himself when Epstein was arrested in the first time in 2008. So he'd been in prison, and he's also best buddies with Andrew, who already just paid a $16 million settlement to Virginia Giuffre. And so the focus was on Brunel. He was set to finally have a trial. So discovery, all the information was going to come out, and suddenly decides to kill himself. And they say, oh, the cameras didn't work. Same with Epstein. Now, in Epstein's case, the cameras did fail. The guards are taking a nap. His door was unlocked. It was like clearly murder. With Brunel, it's also murder, but they're exaggerating. There were no cameras. So there's no cameras to be off. They just didn't have cameras, which is a smarter thing. Like, instead of having them and they go off on that one day, they just don't have them. But that's part of the prisoners' rights. They don't put cameras on individual cells 24 hours a day. But there was a camera in the hallway, and there is an investigation into his death. But I have a feeling that whatever results they find will just be classified, or a lot of people didn't even know he'd been arrested. A lot of people didn't even know who he was. All they know is Maxwell and Epstein, and they act like it's a couple rich perverts that did this whole thing all by themselves.
Right.
Women. No, it was an Israeli intelligence front. It was backed by Les Wexner and the Israeli state, Ehud Barak, and others, that was gathering blackmail on people in positions of power, politicians, governors, senators, a President Clinton, for one, to blackmail them for Israeli interests. And Epstein dipped into his own stash. I mean, Maxwell's family is related to intelligence. Her father helped work with Israeli military intelligence, and her whole family's like that. So she better be pacing back and forth, because she could end up tied up in bed sheets one day too if she starts talking.
Yeah. Do you think that's going to happen? Like that was going to be my next question about Ghislaine. Like, do you think
they haven't killed Claire Bronfman, and they haven't killed Ghislaine Maxwell? It's harder to infiltrate a female prison because Maxwell's in solitary, so she has no roommate there to kill her. You could bribe the police to do it, but there's so much attention on this because of Epstein that if you killed Maxwell, it would
just be too much.
It's too that they can't cover that up. Now they could kill Brunel because there's never really a lot of attention on him anyway. I remember going on Sean Atwood's show and he didn't even know he'd been arrested yet. Like a lot of people didn't know Brunel. I got that news out there back when I still had a YouTube. Like, Brunel's in jail. They got him in Paris. It was a little story in the 6-page, what the fuck? It was in Le Monde, and I'm like, they got Johnny Brunel. I follow these people around. So the moment he died, and a minute after that was released, I was on. And of course, I was banned on Twitter, suspended. I was suspended for correcting Tim Pool on his idiot take on the Civil War, where he said Maryland was the only slave state. Fucking retard. You can't say retarded on Twitter. Like, he's not actually retarded. It's just a figure of speech, meaning like he's
Isn't
really
that how
dumb.
Dan McAdams got banned for saying?
Yeah, he called Sean Hannity retarded or something.
Yeah.
But I didn't even call Tim retarded. I called his take on the Civil War retarded because it is. Maryland was not the only northern slaveholding state. I mean, you had your official slaveholding states with Kentucky, Delaware, Maryland, Missouri, and West Virginia, and also Washington, D.C. itself. But there are unofficial ones like California, which on paper was a free state. But no, they absolutely had black slaves, American Indian slaves, and Chinese slaves well after the Civil War. That was the last state in the Union where slavery ended, with California. Even after the 13th Amendment passed, which got rid of slavery in New Jersey, Delaware, and Kentucky, all of whom still had it after the Civil War, it did not end it in California because out west they just did what they wanted to do. They had more slaves than Alabama, California did, and that's a Yankee state, but whatever. But New Jersey still had slaves. Maryland had slaves, of course, but so did Kentucky, so did Delaware, so did Missouri, so did D.C., so did West Virginia. And then in a sense, that's black slavery. And then all of them had Asian slavery. So whatever.
Yeah,
Tim doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. And he's just an uneducated skater guy that is like, he didn't finish college, he didn't anything, he's not a historian, he doesn't know what he's saying. And his guests are always like, yeah, Lincoln ended slavery. You fucking dumbass. And there's nobody ever on there to correct him. And I don't think if someone just showed him, I don't think he'd oppose it really strongly. He'd be like, wow, I didn't know that. Whatever. But yeah, it pisses me off, man, because I really want to reach these people and go, shut up about the Civil War. You don't know what you're talking about. But there's been a bunch of Yankees talking to each other and none of them know shit about anything. It's really frustrating. It's almost as frustrating as watching The View. The View is like a bunch of fat ladies talking bullshit to each other who don't have a fucking clue about anything. They're like, well, I think blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's like unwatchable. And watching Yankees talk about the Civil War, what they heard in second grade or movies or whatever, is so frustrating. It's like, oh, fuck's sake, Tim, please, you need an intervention. You need intervention
I'll give you a
worse
little
when you had
bit of
Jack Murphy on there, who is, blackface for the Irish, Jack Goldstein, whoever his real name was, who is a literal cuck, who was talking about, how to be a man.
We got to remember the white pills though. So like, I know you've talked about like, it's scary when Ann Coulter's saying something that makes sense, nowadays or whatever. But the latest one is Candace Owens. Like I never thought I would see that, but the stuff she's been saying about Ukraine, I don't know if you've seen any of it, but it's like, holy shit. She was saying like, if you think that America isn't the aggressor in this, you don't know shit. You need to listen to Putin. You need to read Putin's speech. And you need to understand that this is because we've been expanding NATO. And she like went, it was kind of like, it wasn't just like some basic, like, oh, we're bad, they're good. It was like laid out like why NATO expansion. I was just like, what the hell? Who are you? Like, aren't you the turning point lady? Like,
Candace Owens has matured a lot because she used to be a fucking shit lib. Yeah. And then she was like
Boomer Con,
the token black Republican or whatever. And then she's not, but that's how they try to portray her. She's not a unicorn. There are lots of black conservatives. One of my favorites is Thomas Sowell, and I disagree with his Iran policy, but I think on sociology and economics, the guy's spot on. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was funny when we had two anarchists and a libertarian defending Larry Elder because the other side was Gavin Newsom was so bad. They were like, I guess I hope Larry Elder wins. That's dark times.
For sure. So what's this thing? We're going to DC, just for everyone who's wondering what it is.
Two things there. Well, okay, so every year except for the last couple because of Corona, there's this conference on the power of the Israeli lobby, saying, how bad it is. I just call it anti-AIPAC. They don't like that name, but I'm like, well, I'm not you, so I'll say that. I've already got the black spot. Who cares? Fuck AIPAC. But, they have speakers, Gideon Levy's coming, all these fucking Chad people. I've seen Max Blumenthal there, Norman Finkelstein there, Allison Weir, so on. Justin Romano's been there, Scott Horton's been there. Grant Smith's always there. He's kind of one of the co-hosts of the event. And I've gone to all but one of them. I missed the very first one. I've been to 5 or 6 of them. And so that's an all-day thing on March 4th from 8 a.m. until 7 p.m. But the last 2 hours of it is just like drinking and networking. But so from 8 to 5, speakers, there's a break, and then there's like a lunch break. But the rest is all lectures and keynotes and whatnot. And then a couple hours of networking there at the end. And there's also a gala on the 3rd at 6 p.m., but that's an invite only fancy pants thing. It's $300 tickets and all that. I think that's sold out. So that's what's going on the 3rd and 4th that I'm going to DC to attend. Now I'm holding my own event on the 5th and for you guys on the 3rd, where I'm going to screen my film, which is also about Israel's influence, how they stole the bomb, and it ties into the Kennedy assassinations, the Epstein ring, all of it, because it's one long continuous thread. This Sonborn Institute mega group onward up to today, right, is only the same couple generations guys, and some overlap with both, like Les Wexner. So I'll be explaining that, how they stole the bomb. It's a film. I keep saying NUMEC, but it's just going to be called How Israel Stole the Bomb, because a lot of people don't know what the fuck NUMEC means. Yeah, so the Nuclear and Uranium Equipment Corporation. So they, I'm inviting people to that, and I had to wait till very recently because they keep changing the Rona rules of whether or not I could even get to DC. Right, now I'm worried about getting back to Japan because they're like, oh, they changed the rule this morning. I get an email on the toilet saying, if you leave from March 1st, you can't come back. Like, well, I'm leaving. I've already paid for this 3 times, and I'm doing this, and I'm going to get back somehow.
If not, we'll just have to transplant your whole family to New Hampshire.
Yeah, well, if I can't come back, then they're all coming here. I don't know, or going to. Fuck, I don't know what I'll do, but like, I really need my computer and my children, and my wife. I got to bring the computer too, not just my family. Like the computer is like another kid almost, because that's my job. Like everything's on there. So, but yeah, I will be screening the film, and people are like, what time? What time? I can give you the day, the 5th, and then for my core group, we'll do it on the 3rd, also. But the time depends on when the media room is available, and and I kind of got to get there and hash that out. And I also can't announce like where and the time because Gabe Hoffman will cancel it. He'll call the place and get it canceled, which sucks. And I hate not telling you way ahead of time, but if I do, I've got my resident fucking follow around Zionist that decides to cancel everything. So if you want to be able to see it, you're just gonna have to meet me in DC. Now I'll be outside the press club on the 3rd at 1 o'clock. I'm going to the gala at 6, but at 1 o'clock I'll be there. Okay, so right outside the Washington Press Club, 1 o'clock in DC. I'm planning, gather some people, go over to the Lincoln Memorial with what I always do is I go there with my Confederate stuff, and I have the big poster board quotes of Lincoln's racist crap, right? It says Abe Lincoln. Like, these aren't my quotes. That's that statue. This is what he really believed. That always gets a nice reaction. I don't know if that's going to be possible this year. If there's really a trucker rally and it's all held, then we might just decide to go drinking in the hotel instead. But depends on how clusterfucked it is. So.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I don't know how close you've paid attention to that, but they're talking about deploying the National Guard and everything to stop them, and so I have no idea what.
Well, in that case, if there's a big audience, then I'm going to switch and bring my Boycott Israel flag and just walk in front of the cameras everywhere. Yeah. No, just I wanted the eyeballs to see it. I do support the truckers, but this is just me saying fuck Israel because fuck Israel.
Yeah. If I'd known there was going to be this huge trucker protest, I'd have spent the last couple of years just going to like every truck stop and trying to get them to end the Fed, because if that was the protest, like, we are not going to drive again until you end the Fed.
Well, what are they protesting? Like, we don't have mandates. So
I don't know.
If they were like jail Fauci, then I'd honk. I'd dress up like a truck, like Optimus Prime, and walk around, whatever. But
it's not like Canada. DC, it's not like the same fucking amount of oppression.
Yeah, but you're in Washington. Why don't you just go inside the building legally and talk to Congress?
Mm-hmm.
I understand protesting in San Francisco or something, but like you're in DC, right. Go make a meeting, and like a grown up.
Yeah, trust me, I've made this point to them a lot. I've been talking about
we can do that too. That's what we can do. Hey, you sick of this? Follow me. I'll do all the talking. Just stand behind me and like wrestling interview, and just be that guy. Mm-hmm. We'll go into the building. We'll make a meeting. Well, like, who here's from this state? Raise your hand. All right, we're going to that office. Where are you from? All right, we're going to that office. Dude, let's do that. Let's gather a bunch of people who come there from wherever and say, where are you from? Where are you from? Where are you from? And go hit all those offices. It's not that hard. You just walk into the Hart Building, say.
I'm just worried about, saying let's go into the Capitol after what happened. That could turn out pretty bad.
Well, you go. I'm not talking about going into.
No, I know,
House
but
floor.
Still, just the optics of it. Like,
No, you are allowed as an American citizen to meet your representative. So you can go in and meet legislative assistants perfectly legally. You're allowed in the building. You go through the metal detector and all that, dressed nice, and I will issue your demands for you. I'll say we're against mandates in all states and these indirect mandates. Because you're like, oh, well, the Supreme Court said there's no federal mandate. Like, yeah, but we still have all these restrictions on airlines and and it just needs to end. Like, we need to live with it. It's like the flu. We don't need masks. We don't need any of this stuff. And Fauci needs to go to jail because he did do gain of function research, which is illegal, and he should be in prison.
Mm-hmm.
I think a jail Fauci movement would be great. Oh, fucking yeah. Let's do that, man. We got the Jackmans and you, myself, and I've got a crew like 10 other people that will definitely do this. So we can get some truckers behind us too. We're going to go in and talk about prosecuting Fauci for gain of function. We'll go visit Rand Paul. We can go visit Thomas Massey. We can go get the people already on our side. I think Cawthorn would support that too. Madison Cawthorn, North Carolina would do it. And
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Oh yeah, she's on board for sure. She's our AOC, right?
Just don't show her the "End All Aid to Israel" flag, because then she might not get too excited. But
yeah. See, that's that one's much harder. But I think a jail Fauci thing. Like, look, we got the 28 pages unredacted doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So I swear, people just never do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my goal. It will be open on the. Okay, here we go. On the 3rd, let's meet at 1:00. Go over to Congress and we'll lobby. And you can film it, and we'll teach people how to do it. Here, you just go in, you ask to meet so and so. They'll say no way. You say, "Can I talk to a legislative assistant about XYZ? Which one do I need to talk to?" If that person's there, they'll talk to you. If not, they'll give you a card and a time to come back to talk to them. If you have a card and a time, then you just go to some other office and try to do it again. Collect your cards. Eventually, some people see you. You talk to them, and they go, "Oh, it's 3. It's time to talk to so and so," and you continue. And that could go on all day. I can leave at 6 and go to the gala, and this shit can continue. Like, people that live around this area just need to learn how to do this. This is what AIPAC does. This is what a lot of interest groups do. Mm-hmm. Go in as American citizens, say, "I'm sick of Corona, and I want Dr. Fauci to pay." The NIH gave money to Echo Health. They gave money to the Wuhan Institute. It's been genetically traced there. They made this fucking virus. There needs to be hell to pay. And I think, they're waiting for Americans to do that. So they can say, "I had constituents from XYZ place telling me, da, 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 da." Do it. They're on the ropes with COVID. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man,
I think,
DC, there's so much we could do if I could be there for longer. Oh,
well, if you can't go back, you can be.
Well, I might get stuck. There you go. If you don't let me back in Japan, I'm lobbying every day.
Yeah. Just knocking on the door. "End all aid to Israel. End all aid to Israel. Jail Fauci. Jail Fauci."
Yeah. Exactly.
All right, man. Well, where can people keep up with you? I got all the links in the description, but just for people listening on the audio version.
Just type this in. It's like anti-neocon, ancreport.com. And that's got all the links. And Substack's good. Telegram's good. Those sort of be the main. And I put videos on Rumble and Odyssey and all that, but they're always on ANC Report. ancreport.com will have every video, every podcast, every article. And somebody will be updating that while I'm in DC. I got a guy. So while we are live streaming from there, my phone won't work, but other people's will. And it's just like, yeah, let's just tell me where you're sending it and we'll copy it over to all the places we need. So it's exciting, man. I'm looking forward to the conference. I'm looking forward to screening the film. I'm looking forward to just hanging out with the horsemen.
Yeah.
And doing some lobbying too. And I hope this trucker thing works. I hope it's not a bunch of mouth. If it's as big as they claim, awesome. But they're gonna fence it up and gonna try. They're gonna call you Nazis. They'll have some idiot out there with a swastika running that around next to you and be like, see, white supremacists. Don't fall for it. Don't do anything violent. Don't.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't work out in the long run. And they'll have someone not telling you to lobby like you are, but to go in like they did on January 6th or something stupid like that. And don't.
You can't go into the Capitol building onto the House floor. You're not allowed to when they're in session or something. That's illegal. Mm-hmm. But you are allowed to meet them at their offices.
Yep. There's lots of videos of people doing that. If you go on YouTube, you can I think Marjorie Taylor Greene did it before she was a representative to AOC. And it's a pretty fucking hilarious video. I forget what she was saying to her, but she opened. Have you seen that one? She opens the mail slot in the door and is just screaming in the door at her because she wouldn't come out to talk to her or something. It's fucking hilarious. But
AOC's office is all the way in the corner too. They put her all the way there the hallway. She's got all these post-its notes all over her door. It's like she's 12.
Yeah.
Because we went there and said, yeah, we agree. No airplane. I just flew here from Japan. We should get rid of airplanes. Because she was talking about that in the Green New Deal. No planes. What a moron. Yeah. Her staff is just, they know. How could you not, right?
Yeah.
I got to bounce though, brother. I'm going to see you in a few days.
Yep. We'll see you.
We should go to the Russia house. It got vandalized. So I'm going to eat there on purpose. I'm going to give them my Patreon because they don't have a fucking anything to do with Ukraine and Russia. It's just a place that sells Russian food.
The food's already here anyway, so what the fuck? That's what everyone seems to be missing.
Just buy it from Costco, They prepare it in a Russian way, whatever.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on. We'll see you in a couple days.
Peace.